David and Jonathan, how are you?
Great, great. Just to add a little note, because they got 2 minutes left. We have a philosophy on the Tommy project that the only people who don't break the build are people who do nothing. So it's like you should be happy that you have tools to tell you this stuff. Don't get mad when they show you something red. Celebrate that the tools are there. That's what they're for, is to make what happens in reality something you could actually cope with.
There you go. DJ Schleen has said something too that got to me. He started last year. He said, you know what? What we're doing is we're not breaking the build at the very beginning. We're letting it continue with warnings to say, you've got a piece that's not going to make it into production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to make what people do in reality an acceptable part of your workflow, or you're just lying to yourself. You know what I mean? And the job of tools is to make sure that that is healthy and can be dealt with, and you don't get to production with the wrong thing.
There you go. Okay. Jonathan, good to see you. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Where are you? I know where David is. Where are you physically located?
So I'm physically in Northampton in the UK, so about 60 miles north of London.
Oh, you got that remote force working, huh, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah. We hired everybody who was a committer on the open source project, wherever they happen to live.
That's right. I remember you and I talking about that.
That's everywhere.
We're doing the same. We've got a guy that lives in Alaska at the base of Denali. I mean, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
We got Prague, Guatemala. We got, of course, me in the U.S. We got John in the UK. We got France. We're really spread out.
Have you got anybody in Moscow or in Istanbul?
Ukraine, but not Moscow.
Okay. Let's share your slides. Desi, I've got you on here as my checker. When Dave, are you sharing your desktop, David? That's what you're going to do for a demo?
John is doing all the demo work, so I'm happy host next to you.
Okay. I'm going to do that. Desi, can you confirm that you can see John's slides?
Yes, I'm confirming I can see and hear.
That's excellent. Thank you. We were having difficulties earlier, so that's great. All right, John, Dave, you guys are up. I'm in the background meeting.
Well, let me give you a little introduction, John. So just so everyone has an awareness, we started a partnership with Sonatype, about 2 years ago, and one of the things that we do support for Tomcat, Tommy, and ActiveMQ. So we do a lot of work with open source components. So we're not the people who are consuming necessarily the open source. We're the people who are actually supporting and patching the open source. And even we needed the kind of tool set that's available with Nexus Lifecycle, specifically for catching vulnerabilities. So what we do is effectively load up all the Tomcat, Tommy, and ActiveMQ versions into Nexus Lifecycle and notify the customers when they have something that is a vulnerability that affects them. And we work through the vulnerability with them to determine, is this something you need to worry about? Are they using the features in question? And if so, we get them a patch if they have an old version of Tomcat, Tommy, or ActiveMQ that they're using, so they don't have to continuously upgrade to the latest feature version. But if the version they're on is discontinued, we'll patch it. So in this, we really got to be extremely familiar with CVEs. And so we put together, it was sort of a list of some of the 5 more notable CVEs that we dealt with and patched in Tomcat. And so, that's the basis of where we're coming from. But I'll let you take it from here, John, because you're the one who does a lot of this patching. He's our director of support. So, John, go ahead and take it away.
All right, fantastic. So I've got a few vulnerabilities to demonstrate today. I will just do the very quick sort of legal bit. I will show some exploits as we go through. So if you do run these on your own system, please do make sure you have the permission of whoever is in charge of that system before going ahead and running those.
John, if you hold on a second. Dave, could I get you to mute your mic? We're getting a feedback loop. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. So the first one I'll show is what I call a constraint bypass. And so I've got a application to demonstrate this, but effectively what I mean by this is that we have a particular case in Tomcat where it's actually possible to access a URL that we actually shouldn't have access to. So with the app configured correctly using annotations, there's a very small window where an attacker can access something that they shouldn't be able to. So this is CVE 20181305. And what I'll do is I'll just jump into some example code that I've got here and then bring the application up in the browser. So the example application that I've got here, I've deliberately kept it very, very simple. So although it's sort of got a banking theme to it, I've deliberately kept everything super simple just to demonstrate the actual bug itself. So I've got two servlets here. One is an account servlet, and it just shows some details about an account and a list of transactions. And this is set up to be invoked with this context here /account. And we're expecting whoever is accessing this to be in a group called secured inside Tomcat. I then also have another servlet /account/withdrawal, and this will actually receive some parameters coming in, and it will actually add a transaction to this account. So if you take a look through the code here, we have a target account number and a reference, and we're going to go and actually remove some money from the account when this servlet is invoked. The way that the permissions inside Tomcat work is what's covered here should be covered by these annotations here. So actually this particular servlet, because it sits underneath /account, should be covered by these security constraints here. But what I'll show you is with the application, these annotations actually only get read when the servlet is invoked. So if this particular withdrawal servlet is invoked first, those constraints won't actually be taken into account. So in the normal running of the application, hopefully you can see my screen. Oops.
I had to laugh here, John. Are you testing the demo gods here?
Yes, it would appear so. we're going to be testing the demo gods quite a lot in this one.
Just a caveat: we've rehearsed this, and getting through 5 vulnerabilities in 25 minutes is super tight. So we might only have like 4 or 3, but we'll see what we can do. One of them is recorded and available on the internet. So.
So I'm going to log in as David. So congrats on your account with Dodgy Bank, David. And we can see some transactions that we've got going on here. So congrats on the new guitar that you bought the other day. And we can go ahead and we can send me some money, for example. If you want to give me 200 bucks, we can go and make that withdrawal. If I go and restart Tomcat on the server. So if I just flip over to my server here.
So I saw that you logged in, right?
Yeah, that's right. So this app uses basic authentication.
Have you restarted the server yet?
Nope, sorry. This always goes quicker when I'm not doing a live demo.
Okay. Well, yeah, also Hangout.
So I've just done a... Yeah, for sure. I've restarted the server, and what I'll do is I'll just flip over to my console here. And if I run a curl against this, so you can see in the request here, I'm going to access the withdrawal servlet here, and I'm going to just send in a target account number, a reference, and an amount here. What you'll notice is that instead of getting a 401 please give me your username and password, it's actually just giving us back the HTML. So the request has actually been allowed, and I can run this through a number of times until such time, if I remove this data here.
John, while you're doing that, click that hide button on that Google window at the bottom so we can see all the
Sure
code.
thing. Sure.
Yep.
Whoops. There we go. Hopefully that's better. So now if I hit the account servlet there, you can now see this is requiring some authentication. And if I go back now and make the same request again, this is now going to tell me that it requires authentication as well. So when that account servlet actually gets loaded, that's the point at which that annotation is being processed. So obviously, you know, I've had a very narrow window there where I've actually been able to make some transactions without actually having to log into Tomcat. Or, you know, I could have logged in but had a role that perhaps wasn't allowed.
Yeah, but it's also something you probably not notice because you would write test scripts that do a login and then go ahead and do the withdrawal. So you probably would trigger the login first and not even notice that if you don't log in, you can still get at the other thing. Just depends on.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few mitigations that we can take against this particular issue. So you know, the first thing would obviously be go and check your usage of security annotations and look at what constraints you have applied in web.xml. And so you could shift from using the annotate-based approach to using web to applying those constraints in web.xml instead. You can also upgrade your version of Tomcat. So I do have a little table here showing the different versions of Tomcat where it's been fixed. So you can see it's been fixed in the 7.0, 8.0, 8.5, and 9.0 code base. It doesn't apply to Tomcat 6 because these annotations weren't available. Okay, so I'll move on to the next one. So the next vulnerability that I've got to show you is a denial of service one. This is this one's a little older, but it's an interesting bug that's in the HTTP2 connector inside Tomcat. So if you're not using HTTP2, this is something that you can turn on inside Tomcat and get quite significantly improved throughput as the requests are multiplexed into a stream. But there is an interesting bug in early versions of Tomcat 5 and I think very early releases of Tomcat 9 where you can actually craft a particular payload and it will create an infinite loop inside Tomcat. So I'll do a quick demonstration of this one. And for this, I don't need a particular application to be deployed. I only need the HTTP2 connector turned on and available. So if I just flip to the inspect tab here and just do a refresh on this page, hopefully you can see that each request here is using the H2 protocol. And if I just flip to my console here, I can do a curl request just against that page, and I'm getting a perfectly fine response coming back there. If I do the same request again, but this time just add in a header, and all I'm going to do on this one is just create a header called xbig header. And I'm just going to make a really large header, so I just need more than 4K of data, and it doesn't really matter what that is. So I'm just going to go and grab some Lipsum text here, and I'm just going to paste that in a number of times. So this will sort of fill the screen up. But if I submit that request there, this should just return our normal index page as normal, and this header should be ignored. But what you can see here, hopefully, is that the request is still going. So we haven't had a response coming back from Tomcat at all. And if we flip over to our remote desktop and just bring up Task Manager, so you can see Tomcat is now stuck in a 100% CPU. It's just stuck in this infinite loop, and so just a very simple bug, and a simple malicious header has just enabled a remote attacker to just bring that server to its knees. So I'll go ahead and just restart this again. I will probably need to actually kill this process as well.
So, I mean, this is on Windows, right? So did this only affect Windows, or was this Linux as well?
This affects Linux as well.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not just down to the operating system.
And the scary thing about this one is that it doesn't really depend. If you have HTTP2 enabled, which a lot of people would because they're very excited about the performance, you can pretty much just get nailed.
Yeah.
So when was this one fixed?
Yeah, exactly. So this one was fixed in Tomcat 8.5.8, and it was fixed in one of the late milestones for Tomcat 9.0.0. So it's a Tomcat 8.5.6 that I'm running to actually show these vulnerabilities. It doesn't apply to the earlier versions of Tomcat because HTTP2 was only brought in on Tomcat 9 and backported to 8.5.
Yeah, the one thing I notice about these types of vulnerabilities, or vulnerabilities in general, is that new code bases tend to get them a lot. So, right, obviously this is a huge oversight because HTTP2 is new. So as we move to HTTP2, we're going to see a whole lot of vulnerabilities associated with that, guaranteed before they settle down. And really, they never really settle down. They just kind of keep coming. But
yeah, exactly. There has been another CVE since this one that affects HTTP2 as well, and that's to do with various frames. You can actually open a connection and send options frames continually, and that will just eventually just exhaust the connection pool if you continue to do that. So there are other similar vulnerabilities that have sort of come along since this one as well in the same sort of area.
Awesome. What's the next one then?
Okay, so the next three that I've got are all what we call remote code execution vulnerabilities, or RCE for short. And so these ones are kind of the nasty ones because given the right circumstances, an attacker is able to actually run code remotely on our Tomcat server, and so that might be in the form of getting a remote shell or just executing commands on the server. So the first one that I'll show you, this one is a really recent one. You're not necessarily vulnerable to this one unless you sort of fall into certain criteria in terms of your configuration. So specifically, this affects CGI servlet, and it affects it on Windows. And that effectively what is happening with this particular CVE is where you use a CGI script. So what's going to happen here is Tomcat is going to create a process, shell out and run that process. So that might be to run a Perl script or a batch script or an executable. You can also pass parameters, like parameters on the GET request that are going to be appended to the command line. And due to a bug, it's actually possible to craft a particular URL that can then inject commands to be run on the server that you don't want. So the config that you're looking out for this one, you're like I say, you've got to be on Windows, and the thing that you're interested in is whether you've got the CGI servlet enabled. So on this particular server, if I scroll the right way, we should have. So you can see I've got my CGI servlet enabled, and I've got it to CGI bin here. Okay. I have also configured this to have a CGI bin directory under webinf. So this is where the actual CGI scripts are going to get picked up from. So if I flip over to my web browser, So you can see here, what I'm going to do is call this hello.bat. This is a fairly straightforward script that just says hello back to us. It will take some parameters as well. So I can say, $John, and it's going to say hello, John. But if I construct an unusual URL like this one, so if you notice that I've got the question mark and then the ampersand right next to each other, and then after that I've got URL encoded. I've got c://Windows/system32/net.exe plus user. So this is going to run the net.exe program, and it's going to tell me about the user that I'm logged into this server as. But you can craft this to run other commands. So one of my favorite ones to do is just to do net stop Tomcat. And what you'll notice is that request doesn't return, and the reason why it doesn't return, if we flip back to my remote desktop, is because it's gone and actually stopped the Tomcat service from running.
So
I need to
they can
start
run
that one back
on
up again. Yeah. If you can construct the URL, you can basically inject any particular command in on the URL there.
So in terms of like remote code exploits, I noticed that they sort of come in two classes. One is can you run any random code that is already on the machine, and another class is can you actually add it to the machine and then run it. And this is of the variety of run anything they want that's already on your machine, which, well, Windows. So obviously you can get a lot done with that. But that's crazy. Right on. So this was this year.
Yeah. This was this year. This is very recent. So this is in the last couple of months.
Wow. All right.
So just some interesting details on the patch levels for this one. So this has been fixed in the 7.0, 8.5, and 9.0 code base. And as you can see by the numbers there, it was very recent. It does also affect Tomcat 6, but that's way beyond end of life. So that has not been patched. But I did go and grab a very old version of Tomcat 6 and test this vulnerability out on there, and it was there. And Tomcat 8.0 is also end of life, so that's no longer receiving patches either. So if you're running a version of 8.0 and you're running those with the CGI servlet, you're potentially vulnerable to this particular issue. This is one where we've backported a fix for our customers who are still running Tomcat 8.0. So our support, that's something that's available to our support customers.
All right, so we probably got room for maybe two more if we go fast, but definitely one. But we maybe want to leave some questions.
Okay, so this one, this is the one that we have the video for online. So
let's get that one come back if we have room.
Okay. So the final one that I've got, this is a little bit unusual for a couple of reasons. So firstly, it's a little bit of a cheat because it's not actually specifically an issue inside Tomcat itself, although it is. There are versions of Apache Tommy that are vulnerable to this. The other thing that's slightly unusual about this one is you'll notice from the identifier at the top of the slide here that this isn't CE before it. It's got a Sonatype number for it. So this is actually something that flagged up on Nexus IQ, and the references to the specific bug were provided to us through the Nexus IQ data. But this is something that we've been notified about through kind of the extra research that Sonatype do. So thank you very much, Sonatype, for the work that your research team do.
Yeah, said more clearly, it's just part of the value add we get from using lifecycle rather than just looking on the internet.
Yeah, exactly. So This affects JSF implementations, and we've tested this on both MyFaces and Mahara, and we've found both of them to be vulnerable to this. The exploit that I'm going to show, it's publicly available. It's called JexBoss, and basically the way that it works is it's a Java deserialization vulnerability. So it relies on this thing called the view state. And so I have a sample application for this one. Before I do that, let me just start up my Tommy server. So that's up and running on my server. And if we just take a look at the application.
So the interesting thing is that basically you've been running different instances of Tomcat and Tommy during this entire time. You bring the old one down, bring the new one up. So you've gone through at least like 4 different. This is your 4th.
So the first set of vulnerabilities were all on that one Windows server. So that one server was vulnerable to all 3 of those vulnerabilities. This one I've run on Tommy,
okay.
just because it has the extra JSF features in there. So this is a very simple application, and it just holds a tiny bit of state, which is the person that we're saying hello to. And if we take a look at the page source for this, what you'll notice is there's a huge hidden input field here, which is the view state. And in this particular case, this is a serialized Java object. So this is the field that our exploit is gonna attack.
Right, and this one is the variety where they can inject code, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that this particular exploit works is it relies on it. We're gonna send what we call shell code up to the server from our attacker's machine, and then the shell code is basically going to call back to a port that we open up. So I'm just going to clear that screen there, and on here I'm just going to run nc -l, and I'll run it on port 4000. And I'm going to
that's you as the hacker running
flip back here. Yep. So I'm going to run. Yep. So I'm going to send the shell code as the attacker, and it's going to call back to the attacker's machine. Okay. So if I go into JexBoss here, so this is the exploit that I'm going to run. I just need to tell this what machine to connect back to. So I'm going to tell it to connect back to my attacker machine on port 4000. Okay, and if I flip back over here, what you can see here, if you look very carefully, the prompt has changed. So I'm still on my attacking server here, but you notice that the prompt is now actually for my Tommy server itself. So I now have a shell on the Tommy server itself. I can see who Tommy is running as. I can go ahead and change directory and take a poke around, see what things I've got on here. You know, at this point, I basically have control of this machine, so I can go and inspect any configuration files. If this is connecting to a database, I can go and connect to the database and start queries and pulling information back.
So basically,
this is quite a severe remote code vulnerability.
I mean, that's like the worst case scenario, because basically you are allowed to inject some code into the server via that view state field, which then when it deserialized ran code, and now you're running processes as the same user that runs the server. And so you can do anything.
Absolutely, yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's brutal right there.
Yeah.
All right, John, we're closing in on it. 2 minutes if you want to do a conclusion. I mean, my conclusion is this doesn't look like brain surgery to me.
Well, that's right? It's like, you know, we always kind of imagine hackers being the cream of the crop and like the same kind of person that can crack the DVD code and DRM and super high stuff. No, you can download crap off the internet and inject it in people's code. I mean, he literally hacked the server with Lipsum text, right? Just
Yeah, that was remarkable.
brought a server down by copying some boilerplate text and throwing it at the server and just completely decimated it.
Wow, wow. I tell you what I'd like you guys to do. Jump into Slack real quick. You said you have a video of the 5th exploit. You can go to the general channel and you can actually just put the URL so people can get to it if they want to see it. And then we can also put that in the write-up of this session.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I did just have a couple of takeaways that I've just put on the screen there. So, you know, obviously Nexus IQ for scanning your applications for vulnerable components, but, you know, also, you know, work with your support vendor to understand what your vulnerabilities are, whether your config leaves you vulnerable, and what mitigating actions you can take.
Yeah, the takeaway statement there is that there's about 12 of these vulnerabilities a year on Tomcat alone, and you can't always be upgrading all the time. You should definitely be upgrading, but you know, having someone that you could ask the question, does this concern me? Am I vulnerable to this one or not? Do I use these features or config? Having that some person to talk to understand what's there is a really big value add.
And to let the people know that are watching this too, to give you guys a shout out, you are Tomcat as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's nobody that knows it better than you guys do. So to be able to show this, I mean, this is a remarkable demo.
Yeah, well, we've got about 46 years of our lives dedicated to working on Apache Software Foundation, like, you know, collectively with everybody. So we are committers on Apache. I've been working open source 20 years, John quite a long time as well. And so, you know, we do work on the software here. That's why we chose these things to support, because we actually work on them and we love them. So you're totally right on that.
Excellent. And you've got somebody from Australia watching. That's who Edwin is. He's coming in from Tyro Payments. So you now have global exposure.
Good night.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll talk again soon. Thanks.
Thanks.